firstly, thank you very much again for coming in today and speaking. It's enormously appreciated. We're big fans of yours at the station.
Thank you so much.
And maybe if we could begin by talking about the record. There's a lot on this record to engage with, lyrically and musically, and it's fascinating to hear the backstory of how you guys created it using what you had available. So maybe for the people that haven't heard this story, I guess it's a really fun one. So maybe could we talk a little bit about the history of the band, how it came together?
Well, the whole sort of beginning genesis of the record, I was kind of losing my mind after a bad heartbreak. And had a no-talking policy with the ex-girlfriend, and saw that she was calling on the caller ID and reluctantly answered the phone. And she said, I know we're not supposed to be talking, but I know you're a bit of a keyboard collector, and my next-door neighbor's got this old church organ from the 60s that he's selling. I don't even know if it works. Do you want it? It's $50. And I said, put the $50 in the guy's hands now. And literally had to find piano movers to move it in that day, and got it in my house, and just was definitely hungry to pour myself out into some piece of music. And sometimes you just get possession of a new instrument that's in your vocabulary that just inspires you, and it just felt like everything I did on it was inspiring an idea. And sat down that night and wrote the first song for Fitz and the Tantrums called Breaking the Chains of Love, and almost had like an astral planing moment where I could hear myself writing and being like, this feels like something different and good, because I'm quite a harsh critic of myself. I quickly called my my friend that I went to college with, James King, amazing saxophone player, showed up with 4 horns, and he literally started building piece by piece of these amazing horn parts. And we just sort of looked at each other and said, we have to play this live. And we literally made 5 phone calls, and that's kind of the formation of the band. Yeah,
well, it's a lovely piece of serendipity and fortuitous, I guess.
Well, serendipity is definitely a big word for us, because that was so much through our beginning of our career has been serendipitous moments that have happened.
And I guess interesting to hear the palette that you're painting with sonically, because you have a sound which resonates with throughout musical history, but there's an exclusion of guitar sounds, I guess. So you must have a clear idea of the aesthetic that you were going for.
Yeah, well, I think in that writing of that first song, it was sort of clear that, one, we wanted to have another female vocalist to sort of be the counterweight, because this is really a heartbreak album. And it felt like it needed to have that, and I'm a huge fan of harmonies. That we're going to have a horn section, and then we're going to have a band with no guitars. And I think the thing about guitars is that you just always, especially in a live circumstance, they're always so dominant. And felt like a great challenge to see if we could create a full, big, in the sort of tradition of Phil Spector, wall of sound, but without guitars. Yeah. And actually what it's turned out to be is a great asset for us, including live, because guitars tend to take up so much frequencies from the lows to the mids to the highs, that it just gives a lot more room for everyone to do their thing. There's a lot more clarity in our performances, and a great sort of pocket for the vocals to really exist, and makes your focus really become about what John on the drums and Joe, our bass player, are doing as our rhythm section, and lets Jeremy do his thing with the farfisas and the Hammonds and stuff like that.
From a drummer's perspective, this gave me like a great opportunity, because most records that you hear out there right now, the drums are basically crawling out the edge of the speaker and punching you in the face, and it gets a little bit old after a while. And I think what's lacking in a lot of records is the sound of the room. We basically recorded most of the drums with one microphone in Fitz's living room. And if you look back in time, a lot of the Motown recordings, and if you look at the Stax period of recording, most of it was done with one microphone in the room, and you felt as a listener that you were in the room with the band. And I think that's what's lacking in a lot of recordings these days. It gets lost. They think they need to punch you in the face with everything. And in reality, everyone wants to be a part of the process, including the listener. So they feel included, I think.
We've developed a very strong relationship with the fans, I suppose, from the very outset. Can you talk a little bit about how you developed the dynamic, and whether it is something that you guys kind of discuss, or if it just happened in earlier
I think the music sort of just inspired it in us. There's nothing pretentious or ironic about what we're trying to do. It's high energy. It's very extroverted. There's a lot of call and response and calls to dance. And, for us, I think that just came out of the natural progression of, we just from the outset started playing. First, it was little clubs building our own scene because there was really no scene for us in Los Angeles, but we just started creating our own scene and building this reputation of putting on this great live show that I think people were hungry for, this sort of experience, this complete thing where they were really engaged with the show rather than being passive. And, little things like we said from the first show, we're going to go out and do a meet and greet after every show. So for 3 years plus now, at the end of every show, we go out and we meet people. We sell our own merch. We take pictures, do signings. And I think people really respect that because people can smell attitude and that sort of I'm better than you vibe, and we really try and counter that with just humility and the gratitude that we have for what we're experiencing right now. And the thing about our band is obviously we do have a lot of Motown and soul influence, but I take umbrage with people just wanting to call us throwback because there's a lot of people in the soul movement and the new soul movement that's happening right now, but and they're amazing talents. But I feel like we are not a revival band or a pastiche. We are trying to say something new about soul music today, and ours is kind of more of this weird hybrid of soul music, 80s Britpop. The record has a lot of hip hop influence in the backbeat. So ours is this weird sort of hybrid. And I think that's perhaps why we've had so much success, especially in the States, is that people tell us all the time that it sounds old and new at the same moment. To us, that's perhaps the perfect complement for what we wanted to achieve.
Yeah, like I have a theory, you may or may not agree. I feel like the record sounds like, I feel like the record sounds almost like if people were writing amazing songs in the 80s and disguise it a little bit as if it were from the 60s. Right. But at the same time, there's, like you said, the hip hop influence and everything else.
So it's 2011 take on an 80s band doing 60s music, maybe, potentially.
Yes.
But definitely, I agree. There's obviously periods of all of these eras kind of coming through and your own sort of take on it as well. Well, thank you very much